right and left ventricles on both half. That's the way it works.
Yeah.
So what chamber is this here? Left ventricle. I need quick, rapid responses from both of you. What chamber is this? Left ventricle. What chamber is this?
Right ventricle.
What chamber is this here?
Left ventricle.
Left ventricle. And what chamber is this here?
Right ventricle.
Right ventricle. I'll use this to point at. What valve is this here?
Tricuspid.
It's an AV valve. Which AV valve is this?
That's the left side, so it's the back.
Since it's the left side, it's which one?
Bicuspid.
It's the bicuspid, better known as mitral.
Mitral.
So what valve is this?
Mitral. The
Mi-
AV.
Mitral. You can just call it a mitral
Okay.
valve here, all right? That's a mitral valve here. What valve is this here?
Mitral.
Also mitral. You got part of the mitral on this side, part of the mitral here. What valve is this? Everybody.
Mitral.
Mitral.
Mitral. What's this over here?
Mitral.
Mitral. What chamber is this here?
Atrium.
Which atrium?
Right. Left.
The right left?
The left.
The left atrium. How do you know it's the left atrium? Because it's above the
Left ventricle.
left ventricle. What chamber is this here?
Left ventricle. I'm left atrium.
Left atrium also. How do you know it's the left atrium?
Because it's above the
Because it's above the left ventricle. All right. What vessel was this here?
Oh, we never knew.
Well, let's figure it out. We're going to use our brilliant powers of logic and deduction to figure it out, because that's what's going to get you through the test here. So this is this a left heart vessel or a right heart vessel?
Left.
It's left, all right? And what kind of chamber is it associated with? Is it associated with the atria? Is it associated with the atria or the ventricles? That's going to mean the atria. Okay, so we know it's a vessel associated with the atria. Next question is, what category of vessels would be associated? Is blood coming into the heart, into the atria, or is it being pumped out of the heart from the atria?
Being pumped out from the left.
Being pumped
The
into
atria are the
The
receiving
atria
chambers.
is receiving it.
The atria receiving, the ventricles are pumping it out.
in.
What are the atria doing?
Pumping it in.
Oh,
Bringing it
receiving.
in. Bringing it in.
I will hurt you if you do that test. The atria are doing what?
Receiving.
Receiving. The ventricles are pumping out. So, right? So the atria we know are doing what? Receiving blood. Okay, so we know that this is the vessel. It's receiving blood. So is it going to be an artery or a vein?
A vein.
It's a vein. Because the veins are bringing blood what direction?
In.
Back towards the heart. So we know this has to be some kind of vein. We know it's a vein. So let's figure out what kind of vein it would be. Well, this is left heart, correct? What kind of blood does a left heart deal with? Oxygenated or
Oxygenated.
deoxygenated?
So it's a
It deals
pulmonary.
exclusively
I'm
with
sorry.
oxygenated blood.
Pulmonary.
Yeah, it's a pulmonary.
Thanks for ruining it for me.
Sorry.
You always ruin everything. But back to our story here. We know it's carrying blood into the left atrium. And the left heart, we know, deals with what kind of blood? Oxygenated blood. So the next question would be, what vein would be bringing oxygenated blood into the heart? And that vein, well, where would it be coming from?
Pulmonary.
The lungs.
It'd be coming from the lungs. Therefore, it must be the
pulmonary
pulmonary vein. Is there any way to look at this hole and say, oh, that's a pulmonary vein?
No.
I can't do that. I can't do that. It just looks like a hole. It all just looks the same. That was that horrible thing I said earlier here that will eventually get me fired, but it all looks the same here, right? But using detective work like this, you figure it out. It's coming into what chamber?
The atrium. The left
Which
atrium.
atria?
The left
The
atrium.
left atrium. So it has to be the pulmonary vein, bring oxygenated blood. That's how you figure that out. All right. Now, what chamber was this over here?
The right
Right
ventricle.
The right atrium. All right. There's right atrium. All right. What kind of vessels would we bring blood to the right atrium?
Veins.
Veins. All right. Now, what kind of blood does the right heart deal with?
Deoxygenated.
Deoxygenated. So where is it going to get its deoxygenated blood from?
The bottom.
The body. And those two great veins would be superior and
And inferior
vena
vena cava.
So what chamber would the superior and inferior vena cavas be associated with?
Right.
The right
Atrium.
atrium. What chamber would the pulmonary vein be associated with?
Left
The
atrium.
left atrium. Superior and inferior vena cava associated with what chamber? You just do it, you
The
just
right
hammer it
atrium.
through, the right? So now to try to find superior and inferior vena cava, you just got to go poking around in what chamber?
The right.
The right.
The right.
Atrium.
Don't just say right, because that's not a chamber.
Right atrium.
Right atrium is a chamber. The left atrium is a chamber. The right is not a chamber.
Okay.
The The right is just a directional term. What are the four chambers?
Right
Right atrium,
left
left
atrium,
atrium,
right
right ventricle,
ventricle,
left
left
ventricle.
ventricle.
On the lab, I'm telling you in advance right now, on the lab midterm, all right, I'll have pins stuck in these things,
Okay.
and the questions are going to be very specific. I will say, what is this vessel? What is this valve? What is this chamber? All right? Or if it's not a vessel, valve, or chamber, it'll be some other structure, like the septum or the chordae tenonnae. All right? So if I were to point to
Where's the septum?
this over here,
septum
I
is
say,
what
what is
separates
this
it.
structure here?
Okay.
You would say it's the what?
The
The septum, right? Interventricular septum. If I say, what chamber is this here?
Ventricle. The
right ventricle.
The right ventricle.
No, it's
Girl,
the
did
left.
you just call this the right ventricle
That's the
here?
left.
It's the left ventricle. How do you know it's the left ventricle?
It's bigger.
It's big.
Because that free wall is so thick. But
wall.
if I were to point to this and say, what is this structure? You're going to call it a papillary muscle.
Oh, okay.
Because these papillary muscles, if I say, what is this structure, this little string, what is that structure? You'll say it's what? The chordae
Tenonnae.
tenonnae.
Do we
What
need
is
to know the
this?
spelling?
Close enough. What is this structure here?
Chordae tenonnae.
What is this structure?
Papillary
Papillary
muscle.
muscle.
What is this chamber?
the right
Left
atrium.
Left atrium. What is this chamber?
Left
Papillary
ventricle.
muscle.
Left ventricle. What is this chamber here?
Right
Right
ventricle.
ventricle.
Right ventricle. What is this valve here? I've got strings on it here.
Tricuspid.
AV valve, but
It's an AV valve. What's the name of the one on the right side?
Tricuspid.
the bi.
The-
Yeah.
On the right side is the
Before you
tricuspid.
buy.
Yeah.
All right.
The bi.
So the chamber that would be up above that
Is the right atrium.
is the right atrium.
Oh, we cut ours. That's
All right.
ah.
And so part of most of your right atrium is going to be where over on this side here. So what chamber is this here?
The right.
Right atrium.
atrium.
And what vessels would be associated with that?
That's
Superior and inferior vena cava. So if you go poking around up in here, I don't have
take it out.
Can I take out the blunt probe? I like the blunt probe. Doesn't do damage like the other ones. You can just kind of go poke around. If I just going to poke around up on top here, oh look at that. You see that vessel right there?
That would be superior.
That would be what? Superior vena
Vena
cava.
cava.
Because it's coming into what chamber?
Right atrium.
From above. And if you're poking down below it, you kind of see that little opening there. I don't know what you consider to see that little opening there. I wonder what that is over there. Ah, all right. Now we have their inferior vena cava. Notice that their inferior vena cava doesn't go straight down, does it? It goes basically off to the side because, again, they're four-legged animals. So theirs is going to go to the side more than up straight down. I keep going, I'll find it all. Here. Well, there it is. Good. All right. What is this valve here? Well, when I ask you for a valve, you've got four choices. One of the two AV valves or one of the two semilunar valves. So if, anytime I'm asking for a valve, the first question you ask yourself is, first, is it an AV or a semilunar valve? How can you tell an AV valve from the semilunar valves?
I just know AV valves, either the pulmonary or the aorta.
AV valve is
No,
in
they're
the
not.
chambers.
Those
I
are
mean, the-
semilunars.
I mean the
How can you tell the AV valves? The AV valves, their flaps hang down with the chordae tenonnae. That's how you know it's an AV valve.
Okay.
right, and
Their
that's the
flaps hang-
bicuspid tractus.
Right, bicuspid because their flaps hang down, chordae tenonnae. The semilunar valves are much smaller and they cup upward. So
Oh,
what type
okay.
of valve is this?
Semilunar.
A semilunar. And that's where you have your two choices because they're guarding the exits to the arteries that are pumping the blood out. All right? And they're named after the great arteries and trunks that they're guarding.
Okay.
That's what we name the semilunar valves for. Now, is this semilunar valve coming out of the left heart or is this coming out of the right heart?
Left.
It's the left heart, all right? And so where's the left heart pumping? What kind of blood is the left heart dealing with?
Oxygenated
Where is it pumping that oxygenated blood?
to the body.
To the body. What would be the great artery leaving?
Aorta.
The aorta. So the vessel above it would be what?
Right
Aorta.
aorta.
And this valve here would be
The aortic valve.
the aortic valve or aortic. You don't have to call it the aortic semilunar valve because nobody does that anymore. You just call it the aortic valve. So this valve would be what?
Aortic valve.
Aortic valve, all right? Where would you find the pulmonary valve? Coming out of what chamber?
The right.
The right. And that's the one that I said is a challenge to see where you have to sort of initially sort of find it from the outside
Yeah.
by following the interventricular sulcus up to where it hits the auricles, your little ear flaps, the auricles, and then moving over 1 inch. What is this here?
Oh,
Pulmonary trunk. And at the very base of it, where it meets the heart, if we were to cut on the inside, would be what vessel? I'm sorry, what valve?
pulmonary.
Pulmonary valve. So the pulmonary valve is the only one that you actually have not dissected out yet. But again, that's the most challenging one to see because you don't get that from a coronal or frontal cut that goes right through the middle, because it's such an anterior feature. It's right in the front. You're never going to get it from a mid-sagittal, from a middle cut like that. And that's the one you're always going to need like an additional cut. So do you want me to do that or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, you can do that for me. Okay. So if I were to do that cut this way here, let me see if I can do that without butchering it. I know where I'm heading, right? Because I know I'm trying to head where? Right to
Right
there.
there.
And knowing my destination makes doing the cutting a lot easier, because I know I just want to go right to the base of this thing here. Like that. Let's see. So if I
okay.
split this open, woo, pretty. Look at that, it's very pretty. What is this here now? Can you see this? What
Oh,
valve
the,
is this?
The pulmonary.
Pulmonary.
That's the pulmonary valve, or pulmonary semilunar valve. It is, but you can just call it the pulmonary valve. Just like the mitral and the mitral, bicuspid, and tricuspid technically are AV valves, but you don't need to call it the mitral AV valve or the tricuspid AV valve. They're just categories. So you can talk about the 4 valves as just being the mitral or bicuspid, and the tricuspid or pulmonary or aortic. Which of those are the semilunar valves?
The pulmonary and the aorta.
Pulmonary and the aorta. Which are the AV valves?
Bicuspid.
Bicuspid and tricuspid. So what is this up here?
Pulmonary valve.
And then what would this vessel up here then be?
The pulmonary trunk.
Pulmonary trunk. What's this vessel?
Pulmonary trunk.
Pulmonary trunk. What is this vessel up here? Yes, you do.
Oh,
It's
it's a semilunar
Above the semilunar. Right, exactly.
aorta.
And you said you didn't know. You were right here, of course. This is the aorta. And this is what semilunar valve?
Aorta.
Aorta. All right, that's the one that's coming right out of the middle. So what's this vessel?
Aorta.
Aortic. This. Oh, I'm sorry. What vessel? The aorta.
Aorta.
This valve.
Aortic.
Aortic semilunar. What's this chamber?
Left chamber.
ventricle.
Left ventricle.
Left ventricle. What would this chamber up here be?
Left atrium.
Right atrium.
Left atrium.
The left atrium. And as we said before, what vessel would that be there? I pulled
Pulmonary.
in. Would be the pulmonary vein. There we go there. That's where you had it before. This is not good for poking because it's a little too wide. Better?
Yep.
Yep.
And
Way
again,
better.
I think